Hello, loves. I am on here for a live to talk about how I ended some of my most deep-seated insecurities and unhealthy dating patterns through the path of pleasure. So if you are in the trenches of dating, if you are terrified of rejection, if you've been rejected, you've been in the game and it hasn't been feeling great, or you have the universal human experience of having dating trigger some of your deepest insecurities and, turning you into maybe not the best version of yourself, welcome to the club. And we are going to talk about how adding pleasure to your life can actually really be such a deep medicine and such a beautiful practice for undoing these unhealthy dating patterns. So my name is Anne, if you don't know me, and one of the things that I teach is something called the 5% pleasure rule, which is in every moment of your life, how can you add 5% more pleasure to your life? And I was doing this practice when I was dating. And so we're just going to throw it back a little bit and give you a little bit of context into where I was at this point in my life. So when I was really working on healing my patterns around love, around dating, around finding partnership, I had just gotten out of a 4-year-long relationship, and I was your typical very anxiously attached human being. And in my relationship, I had really abandoned myself in a lot of ways. I had sort of turned into what I thought my partner would like as a way to get love. And there was just a lot of my own trauma, my own patterns that came up through that relationship. And so when that relationship ended, I think I was 26 or something like that, I really decided, okay, this is it. I had gone through many relationships that were really difficult, and I said to myself, the person that needs to shift what is happening and, attract better relationships is me. So I started pouring really, really, really deeply into myself. And I found a book called Pussy by Regina Thomasauer. And she talked about how pleasure can be healing, how pursuing your pleasure can be something really empowering, how following your pleasure could be something that could be just a really big part of rediscovering yourself, reclaiming yourself, and also reclaiming what's incredible about you. And so I took her advice and I decided to add more pleasure into my day-to-day life and into my dating. And so I was doing things for the very first time in my life, like buying sexy lingerie just for me, just because wearing a silk robe felt pleasurable to me. It was one of the first times that I was doing things that weren't for the performance of someone else or weren't to get love for someone else, but truly just for me, right? In my relationship, like I said, I had abandoned a lot of my own desires, trying to just feed into the desires of my partner and kind of fit into his life. And so as I was pursuing my pleasure, I was also reconnecting with a lot of my own interests. I started reading books just for fun. I started going to events by myself or trying out restaurants by myself. Just because I was okay, the question on my mind was always what would feel most pleasurable for me to do right now? And at the time I was living in San Francisco, I was living on a street called Haight Street. There was a lot of stuff going on. And, there were times where I'd just be walking on the street and I just ask myself what feels the most pleasurable right now? And I'd walk into my local jazz bar and sit there and enjoy a song for 5 minutes before I went home. I was doing things reading books that I hadn't read before, going out just to feel the sun on my skin for 5 minutes per day, little things like that. And during that time, I am someone who had a lot of first dates. So let me know if you resonate with that, just having lots of first dates. out there. And it was sort of like the beginning times of Tinder and Bumble and all of that. So I was like on the apps, I was having a lot of first dates, and I was single for a while. I was single for probably 2.5 years. So I was in the full throes of like, dating is hell, this is so hard, like, am I ever gonna meet my person, right? I was having all of that kind of drama as well. And it was really hard for me, and in general, the way that I am is like, more often than not, I'll meet a bunch of people, and really, it's so hard for me to really click with someone, to really find someone that I'm like, oh, like, I actually really like you. During the 2.5 years that I dated, there were maybe like 2 people that I would say I was like, oh, I'm actually really into you. I would want to pursue something. And one of these people is the one that I'm going to tell you the story about. So at this point, I had probably been single for like a year and a half. It had been a really long time before I met someone that I really, really, really liked. And we hit it off pretty quickly. We went on a first date. It was great. He was someone who was finally like responsive and proactive and just not wishy-washy. There were like no games that were being played. And I think shortly after our first date, maybe we saw each other twice or something like that. Okay, I think we're back. Someone called me. I had to make sure that that doesn't happen again. So what was I saying? Okay, yeah, so we went on a couple of dates. First person I was super into. And then shortly after, this person invited me to go on a trip with him and his friends. And during that trip, we did like a one-on-one driving to this place. So it was like a little bit of a longer road trip, maybe like 4 or 5 hours from where we were. And so, we spent a lot of time in the car, we were talking, we were vibing, and the trip went super well. And, it was just like, it was great. It just felt so good to be in that zone of actually being excited about someone again. And if you are in dating, I know you know what that's like to go through such a long time of like tons of first dates, and then you get really excited, and usually during that point is sort of when we like get neurotic and we lose our shit, right? We're like, oh my god, like, what about this? We start fantasizing about it, we're worrying about if they're calling, or like, am I saying the right thing? Like all of that, just like the normal human stuff. But mind you, remember that I had also been practicing the 5% pleasure rule. So as I was maybe getting anxious of like, oh, is he gonna hit me up? Is he gonna, are we gonna meet up or whatever? I was also feeding myself with my own pleasure practices. I was really doing things like dressing myself for fun. I was really doing just like these small micro things of centering like what feels good to me, what is exciting to me, and really on this process of like just deeply getting to know myself through pleasure. And so I got really brave, and this person actually lived in LA. I was living in San Francisco. And I remember we had this like magical getaway trip with each other. And then after that, it was sort of like a question mark. Like we both knew that we vibed. We both knew we had a really great time. I think it was pretty obvious that we were really into each other. But we hadn't really set like, are we going to see each other again? And so I decided to be courageous, take a risk in my dating life. And I messaged him and I was like, hey, I'm into you. I would like to continue getting to know you. If you're down, I would love to come to LA and we can hang out. And this person was like, okay, yeah, like that would be great. I really want to continue to get to know you too. And we even set a date on the calendar, and we're like, okay, I'm going to, come down to LA during this time. And so I'm like on this high and I'm like, okay, yay, I did a really bold thing. And I was excited. And then I think it was like only 1 or 2 days later, this person hits me up and is like, hey, actually, before we met, I was dating someone else, and for some reason or other, it didn't really work out. But she actually reached out and she wants to like retry things. And so he essentially called off like our, getting together. And it was a moment in dating that I know so many of us can go through of like, fuck, like I'm feeling rejected. And also like it kind of blindsided me or whatever. I don't think this person is like wrong for this by any means. But I remember being on that conversation, and in the moment, I could have spiraled. I could have been like, oh my God, you were dating someone else. I could have been like, oh my God, I'm getting rejected. I'm not good enough. They're choosing this person over me, right? All of the feelings. I don't know. If you're listening, give me a heart or something if you resonate with having these types of feelings while you're dating. It's wild out there. And what happened, though, was actually pretty miraculous. I remember in that moment, for the first time ever in my life, being like, okay, cool. I hope that, good luck to you and your dating process. And, I had a great time with you. And I remember getting off of that call and feeling, and I remember on the call, he was like, wow, you're handling this so much better than I ever thought you would, or that someone could. And I got off the call and I just remember distinctly, it was the first time in my life where I was like, wow, I had someone like quote unquote reject me, break things off with me in dating, and I'm not spiraling or making it about me and how I'm not like good enough or pretty enough, or I didn't say the exact right thing. And it was because I had built up so much good feeling, so much other goodness in my life, so much discovery of myself through this 5% pleasure rule, that I truly felt like, okay, well, like, it's your loss, you know what I mean? Or not even necessarily so much like it's your loss. Like, I think there's other great human beings out there. I don't necessarily think, it always has to be like, oh, you're losing out, blah, blah, blah. But like, more so what I'm trying to say is like, I knew my value, and I knew that, this rejection wasn't anything to do with how incredible I am. And that is huge, coming from someone who was so insecure in my dating life, right? And this is what practicing pleasure can do for you. And to clarify for everyone, practicing pleasure doesn't have to be some major thing. Pleasure to me is literally just anything that makes you feel good, anything that brings you joy. It could be peace, it could be nourishment, it could be coziness, it could be rest, it could be drawing, it could be reading a book, right? These aren't things that necessarily deal directly with like your deepest dating trauma and like all of your deepest attachment issues, which, context, I was doing like really deep therapy at the same time on those things. But I think that we can go so deep into the therapy or the healing or like really getting onto Instagram and being like, oh my God, well, I have codependence and anxious attachment, and like labeling yourself all these things. But we forget that while healing and excavating that is important, there's another muscle. There's also something else that you want to do parallel, which is building your muscle of confidence, building your muscle, honestly, of self-love and having your own back. I think that when you practice the 5% pleasure rule, when you're genuinely asking yourself in every single moment, how can I make this more pleasurable? Another way to say, how can I make this more pleasurable, is like, what do I really want? What is really valuable to me, right? Like when you're doing that over and over and over again, you are actually building the muscle that can wrap itself around the parts of you that have been hurt in dating and can actually like take care of you when the rejection and when the disappointment comes. Because here's the thing about dating. I tell all my clients this that I work with on dating. Rejection is just part of it. You are one person. If you're looking for like your dream partner, if you're looking for, you know, like a long-term partner, you are one person looking for one other person in like 7 billion people. Statistically, just numerically, the odds are that means that the rest of the however many are probably going to say no, or they're not going to work out, right? And I think that as women, we have so much conditioning that automatically makes us think if someone rejected me, that means that there's something wrong with me, right? And for like the typical raised in this patriarchy, like heterosexual man, they don't have that really. They're raised to be like, okay, here are the odds, right? Like more than likely I'm going to be rejected and I'm okay with that. And I think that as women in your dating life, building that same muscle, as well as building through pleasure, through focusing on yourself, the resource to be able to hold yourself and to take care of yourself when the inevitability of like the toughness of dating comes around is so, so, so invaluable. I know so many people who abandon the dating game completely because rejection or moments where they're super into someone and it doesn't work out, like it hurts so bad that then they go into a deep freeze and they don't date for a long time. And it is one of my beliefs that partnership, relationships, whether romantic or friendships or familial, are one of like just the most incredible gifts of this life. One of the most important things to a life that feels actually fulfilling and incredible. And I don't ever want to see people being so afraid of rejection or being so afraid of all the stuff that dating brings up that they exit the game. Especially not the people that I work with, especially not the people in my community who I know are like fucking gems, and someone would be so blessed to have you love them. Like, are you kidding me? The people that I work with are just incredible. Anyone would be so fortunate to date them. And so I am running I'm running a challenge. It's a course, and it's called the 30-Day Pleasure Reset. And during it, you're going to have 30 days with me where you are going to practice the 5% pleasure rule in your own life. Every single moment of your life, asking yourself, how can I make this just 5% more pleasurable for me? I did this a lot in my dating life. Even when I was like on the apps, I would give myself these little experiments and ask myself like what would feel most pleasurable to me. So for a while I'm not a huge texter. I don't love the like flirty banter before, like drawn out texting before meeting people. So I decided what would make dating on apps this thing that is typically like fuck my life. I was like, okay, I actually think that I'm gonna, match with people. I'll do a few exchanges with them, but I'm gonna pretty immediately ask them out to go for a drink. That would feel most pleasurable to me, right? Even adding just that 5% pleasure made the accessibility, made my availability to date so much higher than what I see some other people do, which is like, okay, like, I hate online dating, oh my god, and then I have to be drawn out, and then I have to like wait for, you know what I mean? Like, I think that what I help my clients do and what this 5% pleasure rule helps you do is realize you don't have to be sort of victim, or you don't have to date according to these like really toxic dating norms that happen in our world today. You can actually, asking yourself in each moment, how can I make this 5% more pleasurable, puts you in this like creative, turned on, like problem solving kind of energy that keeps you in the game. And you know why? Because this game is so worth it. Finding a life partner who can love you and be with you and hold you through the hard shit. I mean, this world is fucking crazy right now. That is something that is so worth staying on, right? And so if you could 5% pleasure your dating, what would that be like, right? How would that change things for you? How would it help you in your stamina to stay in the game of something so important as finding love, right? And so, and then how does that 5% pleasure help you with your own self-confidence? How does it help you with feeling really fulfilled, feeling really nourished? Then you're actually available to show up with your energy on your dates. So many of us are like depleted as fuck, stressed as fuck, and then you're out there dating like, oh my god, it's another fucking thing that I have to do, blah, like, fuck my life, right? Like, and I'm not judging you, I've been there, it makes sense, life is truly fucking hard right now. But this is why 5% pleasure can help so much. It's going to break you out of those patterns. It's going to help you think creatively. It's going to fill you up with your own fucking juice so that you're actually showing up open-hearted, available, instead of like, pessimistic and all that. So anyways, the 30-day pleasure reset is where you'll join. We'll have 5 weeks together. We're going to practice the 5% pleasure rule for 30 days. How would your life change if you really went on this experiment of centering your pleasure in your everyday life for 30 days? You'll also have 5 coaching calls with me because, as we all know, breaking our patterns and like welcoming more pleasure, welcoming more goodness, doing the scary thing, the taboo thing of actually, focusing on yourself instead of everybody else or your job. That's going to bring up stuff for you. You're going to have 5 coaching calls with me where you'll get to connect with community. We're going to celebrate. We're going to dance. We're going to talk about how our experiments are going. You're going to get coaching from me. You're also going to get little like mini audios of me just like guiding you through your journey. Really, I'm keeping this like very low curriculum, high on the practice, because that's what I've seen. Y'all have read a million dating books, you've listened to a million fucking podcasts, you've maybe gone to like a million therapy sessions. I just want you to practice your pleasure for 30 days and see what transforms for you. So, if that sounds like something you want to do, come and join me. It's called the 30-day pleasure reset. You can comment reset on this live, and I believe that you'll get the link automatically sent to you. You can also go to the link in my bio, DM me, write me a letter, any way that you can get your ass in there, because it's going to be so good. And I am excited to do this with you. So, yeah. If anyone has any questions, I'm seeing some comments here of like, Leanne, I see you. Physical archaeologist, I also see you. Karina, thank you for being here. Yeah, if anyone has any questions about like your dating journey or adding pleasure to it, I am here to chat about it. I love answering those types of questions. So, yeah. All right, I'm not seeing anything, so I'm going to hop off, but I hope that this helped you. I'm also going to leave it as a replay for you to have, and if you want to join us in the 30-day pleasure reset, I would absolutely fucking love to have you. And it's one of the lightest, easiest, and also just most effective ways that I've seen to reconnect to yourself, your sensuality, your pleasure, your dating, your turn on, or even just like your own deep, like nurturing relationship with yourself. So come join the 30-day pleasure reset. Love you. Bye.